This is the California Liberty Project podcast.
Welcome back to the California Liberty Project podcast, your home for liberty here in California. We've talked to some great candidates. We've talked to some great ideas people, and today is going to be no exception. So first, I want to thank you all for being here, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at California Liberty Project. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, on Apple, and all the main podcatchers. So follow us there, as well as our fledgling Rumble and YouTube channels as well, as the audio is more built out. But join us. Many of these episodes are going to be posted now video-wise, so we're getting that going as well. So today I want to jump right in to our conversation. My guest is David Giglio. Is that correct? That's the right pronunciation, I hope.
Correct. Yeah.
Very good. And David is running for Congress in California's 20th Congressional District, which is really interesting because that is the seat that was recently vacated so unceremoniously by Kevin McCarthy when he left Congress early, and he left his constituents early, a little bit of a lurch. We'll talk about the implications for this congressional district, as well as all the other down ballot races that is affecting and the situation here in the Central Valley. But first, once again, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for your time, David. And if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and why you're running for Congress.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I consider this to be one of the most important races in the country, and a real opportunity to show the status quo, the uniparty in Washington, that the American people are fed up. We've had enough, and we're tired of these crony candidates that just go there for self-enrichment and to further their own agendas, and not deliver for the American people. So I am somebody who's run for Congress before. I ran in the 13th Congressional District last time against one of Kevin's buddies, John Duarte, who probably been the worst freshman member of Congress that we've had on the Republican side. I decided I'm the only candidate in this race who jumped in to directly challenge Kevin McCarthy. So all of my opponents waited for Kevin to be gone. I stood up to directly challenge Kevin McCarthy because I believe, decades of failure, broken promises, he needed to be held accountable for that, and he needed to answer for that to the people of the Central Valley. My political journey, began, like I said, 3 years ago. I'm a guy who, I'm a small business owner. I was a teacher. After the COVID lockdowns, where no Republicans, you can count them on the number of fingers on your hand, stood up to really challenge the left's tyrannical rule, especially here in California. I don't think, there's only one Republican in our area, Gary Bredefeld, who stood up and said anything and challenged the narrative. Most were too scared. My uncle passed away unexpectedly. He would volunteer his time to mow lawns for retired ladies, and he had a heart attack while mowing a lawn. They found him dead on the lawn. I flew back to Connecticut, and they told us we couldn't have a funeral for him. We couldn't even have a wake for him. And then I turned on the television, and there were mass demonstrations in the street, and I was being told that was okay. And I said, this is wrong. I'm a business owner. People are being told your businesses aren't important. Government shouldn't be doing this to people. And then, obviously, after the 2020 election, the chaos that ensued with the 2020 election, I said, this is how we lose our republic. People are losing faith in our government and our leaders. And I'm a normal guy. I tell everybody I don't consider myself anyone extraordinary. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I got a wife. I got, a child who's a little over 1 year old. I was a teacher, a business owner. I'm just like everyone else here. I'm struggling with the day-to-day, with the economy. And we need people like that who are going through the struggles of everyday Americans that actually want to go there and get things done. I'm not funded by any of the special interests, the big donors that are funding both of my opponents, Sheriff Boudreaux and Assemblyman Fong. I am doing this as grassroots, and I'm going there to deliver on what I say I'm going to deliver. Nobody has given me money to make promises and then fail to deliver on them, which Kevin McCarthy spent decades doing.
Very good, very good. So as far as the 20th Congressional District, For our listeners who are up and down the state, from San Diego to way up north in Jefferson territory in our beautiful state, the 20th Congressional District. Let's talk about, first of all, can you describe it geographically for the listening audience, and then let's talk about some of the really unique issues to this district. You know, they're not going to be Hollywood issues, they're not going to be Silicon Valley issues, or necessarily tourist issues. So let's talk about the district itself, and then again, specifically some of the issues here in the Central Valley that are unique to the Central Valley and even parts of the desert as well.
Yeah, so I mean, the 20th district, smack dab in the middle of California's beautiful Central Valley, spans from Kern County, Bakersfield, all the way up to Clovis in Fresno County. It incorporates Kings, Tulare counties. The best way to describe it geographically, it's one of the most obviously gerrymandered districts in the country. We had a independent redistricting commission, but anybody who's anybody knows when they say independent commission, especially in a state like California, it's a way to it's a Democrat-run commission, and this district was drawn specifically to kind of the Central Valley is very conservative. I mean, this is where Larry Elder racked up 60-70% in certain counties. And the goal was to try and put as many Republicans into one district as possible so that the other surrounding districts would become more blue, and you could
22.
diffuse that conservative voice that would be coming from the Central Valley. And that's exactly what they did. This is a deep red seat. It's an R+25 seat. It's a very Trump, America First MAGA seat. I mean, impromptu Trump rallies all throughout 2020 in this area. So this is about as blood red as it gets. I mean, this would be a deep red seat in a deep red state. And that's why I believe it's important that we have somebody who truly believes in America First and is going there to dismantle the status quo. We need a disruptor from the seat. The Republican Party has a really big problem in the fact that there are many rhinos and established Republicans coming from deep red seats. And those are the seats where you're supposed to have the people that are fighting to change this country. And in terms of what the values of this district, what's important, I mean, agriculture right off the rip. I mean, Central Valley, 60-70% of the fruits and vegetables that feed our nation, our national food supply, come from the Central Valley. Water scarcity, huge issue. Republicans have been talking about it for decades. Kevin McCarthy's been talking about it for decades. We had our biggest Republican delegation from California in decades. And while Kevin McCarthy was Speaker, water wasn't even a number one priority. I am the only candidate in this race that isn't interested in, scrap fixes or patching it up or plugging the dam. I have a real plan to finally solve this issue once and for all, because this is not a California issue. This is not a Western states issue. It's a national issue. It is protecting our farmers and protecting our food supply so we don't come in a situation where we are dependent on foreign nations for our food. So I encourage everyone to go to my website, davidagiglio.com/water. Read about my plan, because it's basically what I want to do is reconvene the Colorado River Commission that they did back in the 1920s, where they divvied up and decided the allotments of water. I want to reconvene that commission, and I want to, one, deal with California's water issues, desalination on the coast, more water stored. And all these other states on the West Coast are going to want to solve California's issue because it also affects them. That's less water that California is going to need to take from them. So everybody's going to want to do this. I want to take this plan straight to the president and get national support for it. So if Gavin Newsom doesn't want to do it, he has no choice. This is a national movement. The American people, I'm going to sell this every day to the American people to let them know you should care about it because this is your food supply. When you're in New York and you're going to the grocery store and you're frustrated because prices for fruits and vegetables have gone through the roof, it's because we are hurting our farmers. We have been destroying our agricultural industry in this country for far too long. And unlike Kevin McCarthy and everybody else in this race, I have no interest in keeping the status quo. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get this done. One thing I learned from my 3 years here, there are a lot of people that are making money on water scarcity. And a lot of the people that you think would actually want to solve this issue, these super rich farming conglomerates, don't really want to solve this issue because they are feasting off the fact that smaller mid-family farms are going out of business and struggling. They buy up their land, they get their water rights, then they sell the water to Southern California for billions of dollars. I am not funded by those people. I have no interest in prolonging this issue. I'm going to solve it once and for all. and then petroleum. Kern County, I mean, we sit in the Central Valley in some of the richest oil reserves in the country. That is jobs, good paying, high paying jobs for California and the Central Valley. Gavin Newsom and the Democrats have had war on, drilling more oil. I plan to go there and make on a federal level, dismantle these regulations and force the state of California to allow us to tap into these reserves. National security issue. Our strategic petroleum reserves are at critical lows thanks to Joe Biden just, releasing it to try and bring down oil prices based on the mess he created. We need to tap into these reserves. That is an important issue. The border. It's a disaster. We have an invasion taking place at our southern border. California is a border state. It's a huge state, goes way up high north, but it's a border state. Every state in this country now is a border state with the amount of immigrants that are coming through our border unchecked. We have no idea where they're coming from. This has nothing to do with not wanting, Hispanics or Latinos in this country. Actually, the most predominant people coming through our border right now are Chinese, single male Chinese nationalists that we have little to no information about. I mean, that is a potential Trojan horse ready to happen. I am 100% behind President Trump's plan to close the border, finish the wall, bring back COVID-era restrictions on immigration. I want a full immigration moratorium until we figure out who's in our country, we deport the invaders, and we come up with a system based on merit that we're accepting basically the best and the brightest. I have an opponent in this race who's a sheriff who's proposing a dangerous policy where anyone who comes to the border fills out a form, gets released into the public, and within 5 years, if they're on good behavior, they're granted citizenship. And it also is amnesty for the 15 million currently in our country. This is a disastrous policy. They got Reagan to agree to amnesty under the guise that they were going to close the border and solve this issue once and for all. The left did not fulfill their bargain. Reagan did it, and the crisis is worse than ever before. If we grant amnesty to 15 million people, you are going to have $4 trillion. 60% are going to end on welfare and government subsidies. They're going to overwhelm our schools, our healthcare systems, which they're already doing. And our infrastructure is just not going to be able to handle it. And then if you let everybody in here, people know that they could just come to the border, fill out a form, and they're going to get released and then, granted citizenship. It's going to cause everyone to crowd. Why wouldn't you come here, right? Why wouldn't people just flood to the border? So it's a dangerous policy. And also, there's no such thing as an illegal immigrant who hasn't committed a crime. On day one, when they cross your border, they are telling you that they have no respect for the sovereignty or the laws of the United States. Immigration law, it's not a trivial offense. You are violating a country's sovereignty. So anybody who's come here illegal is already a criminal and committed a crime. So those are three big issues. Cost of living, huge issue. I'm going to harp on that because inflation is through the roof. California is a burden unto itself. Even in good times around the country, it feels like it's hard to live in California. So, the Central Valley, some of these counties are some of the poorest by median income in the state. And people are struggling. I go to Walmart and to pay for, you pay your bill now. It's like, man, what did I just spend on? It's really hard for people to get by. My store, I do sports cards, collectibles, and that kind of thing. It's a retail industry. Obviously, it thrives on disposable income. These are the slowest months I've had in 3 years since I opened my physical storefront. And a lot of that has to do with people are having to spend everything they have just to get by, just to pay their mortgage, to pay their car payments, to pay their registration, all of those things, to pay for their kids' schooling, healthcare, that kind of thing. People are spending whatever they have on the necessities. And it's really unfortunate. It's something we have to deal with. Crime is a huge issue. That goes hand in hand with the border. I mean, listen, you got an open border. It's going to lead to a lot of crime. Homelessness and crime go hand in hand. My store's been broken into 3 times in 3 years in Clovis, which is a great city, great community. We got to start dealing with these issues. We keep wanting to so-called decriminalize these trivial offenses. Breaking the law is serious. And I was a teacher. We've started to program kids in school where we don't have to do our homework. We don't have to show up to school. We can swear at the teacher, and there's no consequences for our actions. We got to get serious about showing people that there's consequences for action. So those are some of the issues that I think are most important to this district and that I'm going to really hammer when I get to DC.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good sweep, a really good summary of a lot of the issues facing the 20th district. I mean, people don't realize that in terms of being a California district, and you hit on this, you touched upon this, oil and petroleum and natural gas production is huge. Now, here in California, and I think you kind of mentioned this, a lot of our problems are state-based problems, but there's almost always a federal component of the problem. Federal
Well,
regulations, stupid federal laws prohibiting and crushing our petroleum industry in some
well,
cases, right? Go
Well, and
ahead.
also the power of the purse. I mean, the House of Representatives could force California's hand by telling him we're not going to give you funding for certain things unless you
Right.
start doing what we want you to do. And that's where the job of a representative, I should be pressuring Gavin Newsom, say, hey, I'm going to push to deny funding unless you let us tap into these in reserve, unless you build more water storage. You just have to be willing to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of Republicans and a lot of not just Republicans, I want to take that back. I'm going to say politicians in general, Democrats, Republicans, they all talk a big game. It's more like a sport to a lot of these people. I'm not part of the establishment. I don't care about, you know, majorities and this and that. I want to go there and deliver results. I don't care who's going to criticize me. You know, a lot of these people, they want to campaign on issues, but they don't want to solve them because they want these issues to keep going because it brings in campaign cash. So we're gonna campaign on the border. We're gonna campaign on water storage. We're going to campaign on all these things. So you give us our money and we get elected. But when we get there, we're not actually going to do it because then we got nothing to go out and campaign on. That's what I've learned in 3 years. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, and I think the border issue is particularly huge in the 20th and all throughout the Central Valley and interior California. Once again, you touched on this. Even though we're 3, 4 hours north of the border down there, the thing is, so many migrants come, and in a lot of cases, it really helps out big agriculture and whatnot. But in other cases, there are very impoverished communities that are facing Salvadorian gangs, Mexican gangs, big problems with poverty, crime, and whatnot. And illegal immigration has hit the interior of the San Joaquin Valley. You drive up the 99 and it's hit hard in this valley.
Huge gang violence in some of these cities in Fresno County and the surrounding areas. MS-13, huge presence. In some cases, they almost control the cities. Crime, drugs, just running rampant because of
Human
this border
trafficking.
policy. Human trafficking. I mean, these are the consequences of an unsecured border and allowing just people to flow through your border. And you know, you give these people citizenship, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. It's going to be worse. They're going to bring more and more in. And because then they get to bring their families in, right? If they're U.S. citizens, they can bring in 30, 40 people that are immediate relatives and automatically get citizenship. So, yeah, it's a total disaster. And you know, companies shouldn't be exploiting these people either. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate that we're looking at cheap labor to exploit workers. I mean, those are people that are desperate, and some of them are in desperate situations that do want to earn a good living and provide for their families, but they're being exploited by people. And so nobody should be exploiting people. If you want workers, pay them, you know, pay them what you should be paying them. Listen, a lot of these people are responsible for electing people in California. If you don't like the policies and the minimum wage things, then you need to go out and start pushing to get different people elected. Because I know there's a lot of conservative donors in the Central Valley that donate to Kevin McCarthy that also donate to Democrats and Gavin Newsom because they're just feeding the beast, the big uniparty. And so if you're really upset, get different people in there and start reevaluating who you're donating to and what you're pushing.
And there are a lot of conservatives out there that I know, maybe that you know as well, that kind of maybe they really are conservative and they donate to these kind of rhino establishment Republican politicians. And why do they do that? As conservatives, as people who care about this country, as America First people, the reason I think they feel comfortable donating to maybe a Kevin McCarthy in the past or others of his ilk are that, and I love how Steve Dace describes this, they sprinkle the elephant's blood across the doorway, you know, like Passover, and they say, if I just bow down to Trump, if I just say Trump's name, that I support Trump, then I can go on being as big of a rhino. Think of like Barrasso. Think of
Yeah.
so many senators, Deb Fisher, at the national level,
Oh,
in
yeah.
Congress as well. They just say, oh, yeah, I pledge allegiance to Trump. But then when it comes down to how they actually vote, what they actually support, the policies, they're rhino all the way. Pure establishment, uniparty, DC swamp.
Yeah, and listen, one of the things that's a big problem with the Republican Party that is why there's such a disconnect between the base voters and the people that are elected is our donor class is different than the Democrats. This is not me speculating. This is a fact. You know, you have people like George Soros, who none of us can stand, but he's willing to spend billions of dollars on the cause. It's not the same for Republicans. A lot of Republican donors, unfortunately, they're doing their donations for access, and favors when these people get elected. So it's not so much that they're true believers in the cause and they want to push agendas. They want Kevin McCarthy to invite him to a party or make sure that they get a nice, rich government contract. That's what's going on in the Central Valley. Kevin McCarthy is funded by the biggest developers in the Central Valley who also donate to Democrats because those people don't really believe in anything. They're nihilists. What they're getting from it is they get the good old boy club elected, and then they're guaranteed government contracts and tons of money living off the taxpayers' dime. So we have a really big problem between the donor class that funds the Republican Party and the people that actually vote for Republicans. And until we solve that, we have to break some of those people out, and we have to, fight it. And unfortunately, it's tough because it takes money to win campaigns. But that's a big issue with Republican donors. And people, it's tough to hear, but that's a lot of what's going on. And that's why the Democrats, their money seems to go a long way. Their donors are willing to spend massive amounts of money on ballot harvesting organizations and grassroots community-based groups because it's for the cause. Republican donors don't want that. They say, hey, I'm going to give you, $5 million in a PAC, but what are you going to do for me when you get elected? That's what they're concerned about. They don't really care about buying the grassroots. That's why we're so behind on the ground in many ways.
So let me ask you, I think we covered a lot of this, and I think I probably know where you're coming from, but when you say you're an America First candidate, tell us what does America First really mean? What's the essence of America First, David?
Well, I think it's something that everybody who's in politics and anyone who's elected should be an America First person. I don't think it's Democrat or Republican. It's common sense. I mean, your job there is to implement policies that benefit the American people directly and put them first. We have to stop blowing massive amounts of money on foreign aid and reckless spending on policies that don't directly impact the American people. So I believe in spending money wisely, not lavishly. A lot of Republicans will say they're not in favor of government spending on infrastructure and things like this because the government can't do everything. But we wouldn't have to worry about any of that if we stop blowing billions every year on foreign aid, on, funding endless wars and all this stuff. Spend wisely, not lavishly, on the programs that matter, that directly benefit average, ordinary Americans to make their lives better. That's what America First is about to me.
Got you. And so when it comes to foreign policy, that's going to be a huge part. You're going to Congress. Congress has the power of the purse strings, which I love. Very, very underutilized,
Yeah, when
very
they use
important.
it seems like only Democrats know that they're allowed to use it. Republicans seem to not realize that they do have that power.
A government shutdown is only a Republican occurrence, no matter who causes it, Democrats or Republicans, right? As far as foreign policy, foreign aid, should foreign aid exist at all? And what's your general foreign policy stance?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm anti-war. I think we've spent enough money empire building and getting involved in conflict. There's nothing wrong with spending on defense to be defense, but we need to stop getting into these quagmires and fighting these proxy wars. We spent 20 plus years in the Middle East only to watch it fall within hours. Okay. So what did we really get out of that besides a body count and a huge giant paycheck and bill? We have to stop feeding into this idea that we have to go out and be the world police and get involved in every proxy conflict because our involvement only tends to make things worse. So I think we need to scale back. We need to focus on strictly defense and not offense. Our politicians are very good at making everything seem like it's in our national interest. It's in our national defense that we get involved here. But that's just them talking and BS. Foreign aid. We have to cut back foreign aid. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say we should be spending America's taxpayer dollars, spending billions to foreign countries, a lot of them which hate us. So, nobody else is spending billions giving the United States a ton of foreign aid. How many other countries are spending like the United States on foreign aid? Nobody is, because they know that it would bankrupt them. And we have to stop doing it. We're $34 trillion in debt. To think that this is sustainable is ridiculous. You are mortgaging our country's future and our children's future by continuing to get involved in endless wars and foreign aid. So, I mean, we have to cut back all those things. The United Nations is a joke. I'm fully for leaving it. NATO, it's become all these things. We pay the bill for all of these programs. And what have we gotten out of it? So, that money could better be served investing in our infrastructure, investing in our families, making life better for the average American family, investing in our schools and all this kind of stuff. That money is best spent abroad. Investing in our healthcare system, investing in our veterans, all of that money should be spent domestically, directly benefiting the American people. And I'm probably the only one right, I am the only one in this race because both of my opponents, my primary opponent, Sheriff Boudreaux and Assemblyman Fong, they waited until Kevin McCarthy left this race, and they both have glowing reviews of Kevin McCarthy. They think he did a great job. I think he was a failure as Speaker, and that's why he's no longer there. I wouldn't have voted for the debt ceiling. I wouldn't have voted for his continuing resolution. And if Speaker Johnson pushes a continuing resolution, I'll be against that. So I'm the only one here that offers real change, dynamic change. Everybody else offers more of the same.
Yeah, in many ways, I think Speaker Johnson is actually a little bit worse than Kevin McCarthy because Speaker Johnson is completely allergic and totally petrified about any kind of even threat or whiff of a government shutdown. So he's already capitulated, right, on these spending deals. Let me
Yeah, and
ask
I
you
think
about you. Go
Kevin
ahead.
was the same way. Kevin was worried about the shutdown too. I mean, I see nothing better. The American people would respect you more. They elected you to get these concessions, and I think you'd earn a lot more respect if you did shut it down to get. And it's actually showed up in polling. 60-70% of Americans say they would prefer a government shutdown if it meant dramatic spending cuts. That's not just Republicans. That's Americans overall. They want to rein in our government. Our leaders just don't have the courage to do it.
Why are the Republicans in Washington, in the House, so idiotic? Why can they not see that if they pass a bare bones, scaled down spending package and budget or regular order appropriations, that if they pass it and they send this little thin, cheap, chintzy, small spending bill, if they send it on to the Senate and the president, and then if the Senate doesn't pass it, or if the president doesn't pass it, then they can pin shutdowns on the Democrats. Why are they so pathetic, the Republicans in the House,
Well,
David?
unfortunately, a lot of it goes to money. You have to look and see where the money's coming from. And I told you a lot about GOP donors. They're doing it because they don't really believe in a lot of this stuff they're selling to the American people. They want your money, they want your vote, they want you to put them into office, but they don't really believe in delivering on any of the things. And we saw that in President Trump's first term. When he won in 2016, he went in there with a Republican House and a Republican Senate in 2017 and 2018. And it was the Republicans who denied him the border wall, who denied the repeal of Obamacare. So Republicans campaign on a lot of these issues, but they don't actually believe in it. They want the status quo because they want this endless cycle of campaigning and money flowing around. So, and a lot of it too is some of them are just cowards. They're scared of getting a negative article written about them. I got a newsflash for Republicans. You're never going to be liked by the media. You're never going to be liked
You
by
shouldn't be.
academia. Stop. The only time they like you is when you're doing something that makes you look stupid or it hurts another Republican like President Trump. So, grow a pair and deliver on your promises, or quite frankly, don't be there. You shouldn't be there if you're not willing to do the things you campaign on. There's far too many elected Republicans that campaign on everything they've been doing for decades. They've never delivered anything. I think Kevin McCarthy was one of the prime examples of that.
Yeah, I would agree. So is it fair to say not another dime for Ukraine?
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just saw today that they've lost track of billions in weapons that they have no idea where they went. I would not vote for any more funding for Ukraine. In terms of Israel, listen, I support Israel's right to exist. I think there should be no ceasefire. Hamas is a terrorist organization, but I have full confidence that Israel can handle this on their own. And they've said they can. Their military is one of the best in the world. They don't need our direct involvement or any more money. They just need our support saying, hey, we got your back. We don't support a ceasefire. We just cannot keep getting involved. American direct involvement in this is only going to escalate conflicts worse and make the matters more likely to devolve into a global conflict. So we
So
need to
not
start
not
being
another dime
smart.
for Israel. No more Israel
Yeah.
funding.
I mean, we give them
Cut
$4 billion every year already in mandatory spending and aid. That's good enough. And they've said they don't need anything from us. They just want our support. So their military is more than capable of handling this threat. We just have to show them that we back them. And I do. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Go in there and do what you have to do. You have that support. They don't need anything else from us more than what they already get. They already have tons of our weapons. They already have a lot of our weapons, our technology. They're doing a good job. They can handle it.
Let me ask you one that this might be a tougher question, but certainly I don't think it's an unfair question. I hope. As a Trump supporter, as an America First conservative, would you agree with this statement or this assessment that there are many issues on which Trump was less than stellar, where he disappointed a lot of true conservative patriots? And let me give you the examples, and you can comment on any or all of these. Vaccines, Operation Warp Speed, not firing Fauci, giving him a commendation. personnel decisions, supporting the swamp candidates in primaries, criticizing pro-life legislation, the heartbeat bills, not seeking justice for Hillary Clinton, at least an investigation, not getting the wall built completely, and now supporting the new FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. What are your
Well,
thoughts on
on
that?
the FBI thing, I don't know how many people know the money's already been passed. The building's getting built at this point. The Congress already approved it. It's already been signed. I mean, that's going to happen. Now, the question is, where do you want them? Do you want them in D.C. where you can try and hold them accountable? Maybe I think that's maybe what the president's saying. In terms of the vaccine, listen, Pfizer, Moderna, it's coming out. They hid a lot of information from the government and fudged a lot of stuff. So they broke their contract with the government, basically by lying on some data. And I think President Trump, obviously, he was under a lot of pressure to get a vaccine done. So he looks at it in a way like, hey, I'm trying to save people. I'm trying to do something that nobody said I can do. I think at the time he trusted the data from the CDC and that Moderna and Pfizer were giving. I think those companies should be prosecuted. I think their immunity should be stripped away because they lied about a lot of what they were doing. And they withheld a ton of information. So that needs to be held accountable. In terms of the wall, I mean, it was Republicans who stopped it. It was Republican Congress, House and Senate that said, we don't have $5 billion to build the wall. These are the same Republicans that greenlit tens of billions to Ukraine already. So it was Republicans. This is the battle of electing better Republicans in terms of personnel decision. I mean, listen, Trump, his victory in 2016, I think, maybe not to him until it was a surprise to many people. And he had to go in there. And Trump comes from a business environment, where you work for somebody who's a CEO. You do what they say. You're loyal to them. Otherwise, you lose your job. And, politics is a bunch of snakes. And you see people like Kevin McCarthy who are very good at pretending they're with you. And then behind the scenes, they're screwing you over. And quite frankly, there's not a lot of good, true believers in the Republican Party in the higher ranks. So it's really hard to find great personnel because most of these people are slime balls and they've been in politics for decades. So I think he's learned a lot from his personnel decisions. I think his next administration is going to be staunch loyalists. I think, listen, all of us thought Bill Barr was better than he ended up being. He's a total fraud. I mean, a lot of these people said and did a lot and then backstabbed us because, like I said, I think the biggest thing that Trump did was the fact that he couldn't be bought. He was a very wealthy man. He didn't go there because he needed to make money and enrich himself. All these other presidents have gotten rich after they left office. They were dependent on money. Trump didn't need any of that. He went there to do what he said he was going to do. And all of Washington, Democrats and Republicans said, wait a minute. That's not what we do here. We don't actually solve issues. We campaign on them. We fundraise off them, but we don't want them solved. Here you are trying to break up the status quo. The status quo is good for Washington and because it makes them a lot of money and it keeps everything going. And Trump had no interest in that. And that's why they hate him the most. And obviously, he was bringing our troops home. When he went and started withdrawing troops, I knew that was going to get a big target on his back because, look, the Defense Department doesn't even think they have to tell the president that the Secretary of Defense is MIA for days, right? So we have a runaway government. I think President Trump learned a lot in his first term. I think there's things that people can criticize him on. But, you have to understand what was going on. At the time, he couldn't have fired Fauci because Republicans would have impeached him. I could tell you right now, it wouldn't have just been Democrats. He would have been impeached by many Republicans had he fired Fauci at the time because they were all too scared to go against him. So unfortunately, plus he doesn't have the actual the authority to directly unilaterally fire him in the position he was in. But he would have absolutely been impeached and likely removed for firing Fauci. He was a media hero at the time. They built him up to something that he wasn't. He's a liar. He's a snake. But if President Trump had done that, you would have seen probably, I think, 60, 70% of the Republican caucus vote to impeach him. And he would have absolutely been removed in the Senate.
Yeah, and I think the deal with Fauci, the big criticism from people like me and, prominent voices out there nationally is that he kept Fauci as kind of the figurehead of the task force alongside kind of Mike Pence and then Debbie Burks, the lady with all the sequins or whatever. But let me ask you, as far as the FBI, should that be repurposed and or defunded or at least get major funding cuts?
Yeah, I will never vote for any funding for any of the letter agencies, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA in their current form. Either we totally gut those organizations We got a clean house top to bottom, or in the case of the FBI, I'm fully in support of disbanding it and divvying up its resources between state agencies and stuff like that. I will not vote for another dime for those agencies. They are corrupted to the core right now. Something seriously has to change before they deserve any sort of funding. They're just a disgrace to what their purpose right now, and it's terrible because they tarnished what was, a very world-renowned organization. They've turned it into a partisan hit squad for the radical left.
And one, you mentioned inflation earlier, and we agree that that's a problem. It remains a problem, actually, until inflation goes negative. Should we audit or abolish? Can we audit or abolish the Fed? Is that something that you would at least support?
Yeah, audit. I mean, we should audit it every year. I actually want to introduce a bill where we have to audit every single government agency every 3 years, full results to the public, no BS in these audits. Every dollar must be accounted for. If something shows up like the Department of Defense where they lose billions of dollars and like, oh, hey, and it was an accounting error, we lost billions of dollars. Well, guess what? You're not going to get any funding until you figure out and tell us where that money went. No more of this BS. I want to introduce that bill. Audit every single agency every 3 years. Make the results public. If there are discrepancies, that agency has to answer for those discrepancies, or they don't get any more money until they fix the problem. We have to track our dollars. We have to stop spending. The Fed's a total disaster. They just capitulate every time the government wants to write a check or get more money printed. They fall in line. That's not supposed to be their job. We have to be smart financially, or we are going to lose this country.
Very good. Very good. Makes a lot of sense. So we only have a few minutes left together, but can we switch gears a little bit and talk about, we kind of mentioned the 20th Congressional District. Can we actually talk about the race? What is specifically happening? I know I want you to maybe describe, with Kevin McCarthy stepping down before the end of the year, that triggers a special election, right? Which was just announced, I think, on March 19th. Now, are you also going to be appearing on the ballot in the special election, or are you just running next fall for the full term? Can you walk us through this kind of confusing process with the special election?
Yeah, well,
that's after the primary.
I'm going to run for both. The special election, basically, yeah, the way it's going to be done, it's kind of like a lame duck election unless you win the primary before that, right? So the special election is going to be just to finish out the term for this year. So you get about a 6-month stay in Washington. But the most important one is going to be the regular primary because it comes first. If you don't advance in the regular primary, but say you won the special, your time's you already have an expiring clock. So the most important election to me is going to be the one on March 5th because that ensures you're going to be there for a full term and you're really going to be the replacement. The state of the race is crazy. Vince Fong, Assemblyman Kevin McCarthy's buddy, former chief of staff, came out, says, I'm not running for Congress. I prayed over it and God told me the Lord told me my place is in the assembly. And then he filed for a re-election to the assembly, filed qualified, which barred him from, he's not supposed to be allowed to back out from that. Shannon Grove decides she's not running for Congress. And all of a sudden, Vince Fong decided that the Lord's advice was wrong and that now he's going to run for Congress and violate the law. He's going to be on the ballot. He's going to run for 2 offices at the same time, which is against the law. Unfortunately, they found a judge who's been overturned numerous times. It gets overturned a ton in Sacramento to give them a favorable ruling to allow this nonsense to go on. It's going to be a disaster if it holds on appeal, because now you're going to have people around the state. If you're an incumbent in an office, why wouldn't you? Heck, why run for 2 offices? Let's run for 3. I'm going to throw my name on the ballot for as many offices as possible and see which one I win. And then I'll pick and choose. And now we're going to have special elections all the time. People are going to be running for office. It's going to cost the taxpayers, the counties, and the state of California tons of money in special elections. My other opponent was kind of talked into this race in case Fong was thrown off the ballot. Sheriff Boudreaux. He's a conservative guy, but he's proposing a massive amnesty policy. As a sheriff, he should know better. He's dealing with the crime and the destruction that illegal immigration is causing in our communities. And here he is proposing one of the most harmful policies that anyone could offer for. President Trump is talking about carrying out the biggest deportation program in American history. Somebody coming from an R+25 seat should not be a proponent of an amnesty. We need to support the president and clean up our country. Amnesty would be a total disaster. It would cost $4 trillion to the American people on top of the already $34 trillion we currently owe. It would be a disastrous strain on our resources and our infrastructure and our healthcare system and our schools and our communities. And it's just totally disastrous. So that's kind of where it stands. There's a Democrat in this race. Doesn't really, it's an R plus 23 seats, so they're kind of irrelevant.
It's a
And then there's just a
non-issue.
bunch of other people that threw their names on the ballot, see how many votes they can get and diffuse the votes. I believe I'm the best candidate for this district because, one, I'm the only one who believes we need real change. That's why I stood up to challenge Kevin McCarthy directly. I'm the only one who's not funded by special interest in this kind of thing. I'm going there to do and say what I want to do. I'm going there to deliver on the things I promise. And I don't intend to be there forever. I believe in term limits, and I believe in banning members of Congress from trading stocks. I will never trade a stock when I'm in Congress. Neither will my wife. And I will never become a lobbyist afterwards. I think there should be a total ban on lobbying when we leave office. We have to take big money out of politics. So I'm going there to destroy the swamp, not to become part of it. I got a young son. I'd love to deliver on the things I want to deliver on and then come home and raise my son.
Yeah, and to go back then on March 5th, because this is confusing. March 5th, your name will be on that ballot, but also voters are going to see Vince Fong, Assembly member Vince Fong, as both running on the primary for the Assembly as well as for Congress, right? On March 5th?
Yeah, so
Not
I mean,
the
he's
special.
disenfranchised. He clearly didn't care enough about his Assembly constituents that now they're being disenfranchised. He's running unopposed. Had anybody known he was going to run for Congress, they would have given people the opportunity to file for that race. I mean, it's just a total disregard for the law. It's disgusting because as Republicans, and it's despicable that Kevin McCarthy endorsed it. We criticized Democrats after the 2020 election in the swing states. We said, you guys violated election laws unilaterally. We have been criticizing them for 3 years. And now you have the elite in the Republican Party doing the same thing because this is the result they want, because they don't want a true conservative America First candidate elected. So they want to be able to violate election laws too when it serves their purpose. It totally depreciates what we've been talking about. It's a stain. It makes people not take us seriously when we talk about these things. And quite frankly, the California Republican Party, Speaker McCarthy, Assemblyman Fong, they should all be ashamed of themselves. They're making us look like fools. They broke the law. They got some judge who's going to get overturned. They should all be ashamed. It's just totally disgusting.
Even Kevin McCarthy, he must have known that by retiring and exiting Congress right before the end of the year, the start of 2024, that in that case, it definitely triggers a special election, costing the taxpayers probably millions, at least hundreds of thousands, right? If he would have waited a couple more months or later into 2024, it's my understanding that it's not necessary. I think maybe Newsom would have had discretion as to whether or not to call a special election, I believe.
Yeah, well, Kevin, Kevin only cares about Kevin, and Kevin's whole life was to get that gavel and do and
He
say
got the
whatever he
gavel.
could to get that gavel. And once that gavel was taken away from him, I don't think he really cared about anything. He's always been a Kevin first guy. He's motivated by his own personal, rise. He tied himself to Trump because he knew that was the best way to get where he needed to get. And, he's done nothing and said nothing. He's a great politician because he's very well polished. He tells a lot of great stories and he speaks well. But, when you get cracked through the surface, there's nothing there. So I don't think he really cares. A lot of blame should be put on him. If he really cared about the Central Valley and the people he represents, he shouldn't force them to pay a special. He should have finished out his term. He should have been gutsy enough to go on the ballot and face me. I'm actually upset that he didn't want to be. I wanted to run against Kevin. I wanted to hold him accountable. I wanted to challenge him on his failures. He just doesn't have the courage to answer for any of that. He's just going to cut and run. I hear he's going to become a lobbyist, get paid millions of dollars a year to give speeches and do all that good stuff. So I don't
to
think
be a
he cares about
kingmaker.
anything but himself. Yeah.
He gets to be a kingmaker now, right?
Yep.
So he'll still be moving the pawns around on the chessboard and bringing up his machine and funding candidates.
His money's going to both of my opponents, primarily to Assemblyman Fong because he was the endorsed one. But they're all my two primary opponents are both funded by the same people that funded Kevin. And, that's why I say this is your one shot at real change. I think to break the McCarthy-Abernathy machine, we have to win this race because it's going to send a ripple effect throughout the Central Valley and throughout California and finally give us a chance at real change, not more of the same.
So last question here, and I really appreciate you joining us, David. This is kind of a fun one, I think. If you get elected and you join Congress representing California's 20th Congressional District, which members of Congress currently do you think you would probably be most similar to in terms of your voting pattern, or who do you admire? Who do you actually appreciate? If there is anyone. They're all politicians, so
I
maybe no one.
admire Matt Gaetz. I think I'd be similar to Matt Gaetz. I think he's a firebrand. He's going there for real change. I think he needs some backup to deliver on the change he wants. I like Byron Donalds. I am definitely one of those Freedom Caucus kind of types that wants less government and just wants to disrupt the status quo. So those are the people I identify with. I would join the Freedom Caucus if I were elected. And I would be a firebrand like Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz is going to say and do what he wants to do because it's the right thing to do, and he's going to try and deliver on promises. Unfortunately, he's just one of 435, and he has very little backup right now. So we need somebody who's going to go in there and stand beside him so we can get some of this change.
Very good. Well, I appreciate your time very much. Now, go ahead and give us like your website, and if people like what they're hearing, can they donate or support or
my
volunteer?
website is davidagiglio.com. So davidagiglio.com. Please, anything, every dollar helps. I've got a lot of big money that's going to be spent against me. Any dollar we can raise makes a difference. It also say go on there. You can request a yard sign if you live in the district. You want a yard sign. And also there's an option to host a town hall. I'll come to your house, or we can go to a coffee shop. I will talk in front of 3, 5, 10, 20 people to spread the word. This is going to need to be a grassroots effort. Sign up to volunteer, sign up to host a town hall, donate anything you can. Once again, it's davidagiglio.com. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me. And hopefully we talk again soon, and we're going to win this thing.
Absolutely. So for all of my conservative California friends, for all of my libertarian buddies, for all of us out there, liberty lovers, patriots, people who love America and who love our great land here of California, not our government, but who love our state and our neighbors, go out and make sure to check out David. And really appreciate your time, David, and hope to talk to you again soon. And best of luck to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This has been the California Liberty Project podcast. Make sure to subscribe, share it with others, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter.